The essay we're going to go over today is Are Data Centers Building Your Invisible Prison? I'm going to go ahead and read through the essay and then I'll give some commentary afterwards and go a little bit deeper into it. So let's get into it. Data centers have been quietly being built all around the United States for the past several years. Most of us haven't paid much attention. Recently, however, some aggressive proposals have captured the attention of the national populace. Data centers first came into my awareness and were a major concern for me almost 20 years ago. Back then, my concerns were different than the many concerns most people, including myself, have today. I was not considering AI or the limited land resources and energy these massive operations consume. My only concern was that our personal data that has been illegally collected was being stored there, and profiles were most likely being put together on all American citizens. The coming digital ID and mass surveillance state has always been my chief concern. Today is a very different picture. The early developers and visionaries of these data centers, I'm sure, already had envisioned what they would be today. I had no clue. Though this article is largely focused on what is being built throughout the United States, this affects you anywhere you are living. Here are some projected growth stats in other influential countries. The United Kingdom currently has over 520 data centers and is projected to grow by 20% through 2030. Canada is projected to increase the number of operational data centers by 14% through 2030. Australia is predicted to grow at an almost 6% compound annual growth rate through 2034. India is projected to grow by a staggering 500% through 2030. China, which currently has about 120 less data centers than the UK, is projected to grow at about 18% per year. The United States is projected to grow at a 14% compound annual growth rate. This percentage looks small compared to China and the UK, but considering the US currently has close to 4,000 operational data centers, you can do the math. Why is the United States building all of these data centers? The mainstream narrative from our government and billionaire developers is that we are in a tight competition with China in an AI arms race. Okay. The United States currently has close to 4,000 operational data centers. China has around 369, according to datacentermap.com/China. I've already shared the projected annual growth rates. Is this a tight competition? Keeping an eye on China's AI capabilities, especially militarily, is absolutely of national importance for the US. I'm curious, though, looking at these numbers, how we justify the hardships put upon so many American citizens from the building of thousands of massive data centers, some the size of small cities, across the country, while at the same time we are expending tremendous military resources and taxpayer dollars in a war that doesn't appear to help the American people at all. I will come back to my thoughts on why this massive data center expansion is actually happening. First, let us look at the impact these centers are having in the lives of everyday Americans. I want to make sure to say that I am not saying we don't need data centers. Unfortunately, it seems we are at the point of no return in regards to AI, cloud storage, and the internet being the backbone to society. If I had it my way, I would destroy the internet, cell phones, AI, and most modern technology. Send the whole world into chaos, separate the chaff from the wheat, and rebuild society from the ground up. As horrible as that would be, I feel it's a whole lot better than what humanity will be 100 years in the future. However, as in most aspects of life, I don't get my way. So I and we must navigate the world as it is. And technology is the dominant player in this life. Soon, AI will be the dominant species of this world. We have gone past the point of doing away with AI. There is a much greater probability of AI eliminating humans than there is humans eliminating AI. Though, to function as a society, we do need data centers. We do not need the massive scale that is already built and being quickly added to. And when I say we, I mean we the people. There are about 1% of humans, possibly they're human, that do need thousands of data centers. Again, I will come back to why I believe these psychopaths need more data centers than human populated cities shortly. To me, the issue of contention is not the building of data centers. We need a certain amount of data centers to support our technological existence. There is a vast difference, though, between what we need to function as a society and what is well beyond that. For me, the issue is the complete disregard of the well being of humans and the earth that sustains us. If the message wasn't clear before, it certainly is now. You and I don't matter in the eyes of the wealthy elite. The masses of humanity have always been seen as beasts of burden by the elite few. They have needed us here to work the jobs, build the systems, and maintain the infrastructure that supports their gilded existence. What happens when AI robots replace most of the human workforce? They already show great disdain for us now. How do they treat us when they no longer depend on our labor? I'll be honest, I was one of the people who had hope in Donald Trump. Though I always held a healthy distrust, I allowed myself to feel a sense of optimism. In truth, I thought he was a great president for the United States in his first term. I say this as someone who did deep research towards the end of his first term, who carries a natural sense of heavy scrutiny towards anyone who occupies the White House, and who has never and will never carry any allegiance to a particular political party. When he ran, I dismissed him as a joke. I lost all hope after Obama's criminal reign and buried my head in the sand for most of that time. It wasn't until I caught my mind having this inner dialogue criticizing Trump and called myself out on the fact that I had no clue what he did as a president. After looking after looking deeply into the information I could find regarding his first term, I became a Trump supporter. The man who occupies the White House today, from my perspective, is not at all the same man that served there from 2016 to 2020. The main hype online regarding Trump is all about his ties to Epstein. I think it's naive to think that he didn't participate in the Epstein rituals. However, his role in the transformation of world control systems and what is driving his current behavior is so much more than just protecting himself from Epstein accountability. Though I held optimism through his 2024 campaign, even though the assassination attempt on his life was clearly not what it was said to be, he is such a great actor. I actively worked to fool myself and believe that they were trying to eliminate him. I held optimism because I had been living with little hope in humanity's future since I've been researching behind the curtain for the past 30 years. My soul was feeling weak and I needed something to believe in. My hope was completely shot down on January 20th, 2025, when I watched all the tech billionaires smiling smugly in the front row at his inauguration. Donald Trump clearly told us all who his loyalty would be to in his second term. MAGA had become MACA, Make America Controlled Again. I don't think most Americans clearly read that message. Half of the country were blindly hating Trump without truly understanding why. The other half were blindly loving him without truly understanding why. It's only a small few who have been able to keep their emotions in check and view Trump neutrally according to his actions and not be influenced by liberal biased media or QAnon fairy tales. And let me clarify, I do believe the QAnon movement does have much truth within it, but it is flooded with people talking out their asses, speaking from hope and emotions without any actual proof to back what they're talking about. It's another example of why we must always question everything and everyone and never pledge our allegiance blindly to any group, no matter how much they may seem to align with our beliefs and values. The reason why I am bringing up Trump and elaborating on how my support has shifted is because on July 23rd, 2025, the sitting president signed Executive Order 14318. This mandate directs the Department of the Interior, the Department of Energy, and the Department of Defense to authorize the construction of data centers on federal lands. Through this executive order, the Secretary of Commerce is ordered to grant loans, grants, tax incentives, and other financial support for qualifying data center projects. In addition, it also instructs the EPA to speed up data center permitting by modifying the regulations under the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act. Trump publicly attempted to justify this through the AI arms race with China narrative. I already shared with you the numbers that show this reason is mostly bullshit. There are almost no regulations in place to protect American citizens in their homes that they have paid for or are paying for, where they have lived for decades, raised families in, and are supposed to feel safe and protected by their government. The pursuit of never ending profits with no regulation is a clear recipe for the country's demise. Americans are having their homes taken from them by local energy companies through eminent domain law. Others are being forced to either move or endure lifelong suffering because hyperscale data centers have been built next to their homes despite their and their neighbors' public disapproval. For many, their lifelong homes are becoming unlivable. Their utility bills are skyrocketing to unaffordable proportions. Their water supplies are tainted. Their freedom to sit in peaceful silence has been ripped away. The noise of these centers' cooling systems can reach up to 100 decibels and are running 24/7. Online, you will find numerous videos of residents who live as far as half a mile away playing the audio of this loud, consistent humming noise from the data centers. Humming is too soft a word. Did you know that the CIA and other international intelligence and military agencies use constant sound as a form of torture? We see many videos online of under construction data center adjacent residents with constant low water pressure and brown sludge coming through their faucets, smelling like disinfectant. Aquifers are being unnaturally pressurized and breaking down too rapidly. I saw one example in Indiana where a giant Amazon data center being built was using a process called dewatering, where they drain the natural water resources from nearby land to moisten the land they are building on. This water they are siphoning is water that local farms and residents use and depend on. As I've been researching this subject, it reminds me greatly of what I've studied about the Great Railroad expansion across the United States in the late 1800s. Railroad barons used all matters of lawfare, legal loopholes, and financial bullying to displace American citizens from their homes to serve their own capitalistic agendas. And just like we needed the railroads to grow as a nation, the way it was done was focused on profits, cutting costs, and beating out competitors over the rights and well being of human beings. It feels like almost the exact same situation with today's tech barons. Presently, in Lake Tahoe, California, almost 50,000 local residents don't know how they will access power next June. Energy, a large Nevada based utility company, has been providing the bulk of Lake Tahoe's electricity for the past several decades. A smaller California company, Liberty Utilities, was being used as a proxy to power the California side. NV Energy has officially informed Liberty Utilities that as of May 2027, they will no longer be able to provide any power to them because they need to redirect all extra capacity to power the Nevada data centers. Northern Nevada is one of the fastest growing data center hotspots in the nation. This gives nearly 50,000 California citizens only a year to figure out how to power the entire city. Not only do the local residents need energy for everyday living all year round, during the ski season, this area becomes flooded with tourism that will greatly spike the city's energy demands. California is currently in the top 3 states of having the most operational data centers. Virginia is number one with around 665 operational facilities. Texas is close behind. A single large data center could potentially consume more power than 500,000 homes. This astounding number is not being considered when approving zoning and greenlighting hyperscale data center builds. The approach developers are using to get approved for their huge build projects is shady. They are using lawfare, policy loopholes, and very convenient oversights to hide the data of how much water and power is projected to be used. California is a clear example of how data center developers are not disclosing projected water usage by using a clever patchwork of state, federal, and local policies. Data center developers in all states are using non disclosure agreements and policy loopholes to keep their plans and projected resource consumption a secret. Construction plans are often not disclosed until only a couple of weeks before voting, giving communities little time to do any proper research before making a voting decision. Big tech conglomerates are also disguising the data centers within very large warehouses that are bought and owned by LLC shell companies. I've seen developers stating that the local citizens are opposing their data center builds because they are uninformed. How are the people supposed to be informed when the corporations developing them purposefully hide the most pertinent data? Though they do not disclose projected water usage, we can see data from the aftermath of existing data centers. In 2023, American based data centers used 17.4 billion gallons of water. By 2028, annual consumption is projected to reach upwards of 73 billion gallons. Can you even begin to wrap your head around that number? States like California and Utah have long been known for facing drought concerns. The Californian government has already been incredibly inefficient at addressing these concerns. How can building giant structures with massive cooling systems dependent on fresh, clean water be helpful to this ongoing concern? When the builders and operators of these gigantic data centers are more focused on profits than people, this becomes a very dangerous situation. Without public disclosure of the amount of water and other natural resources these centers use, it makes it impossible for residents, local governments, water providers, and land surveyors to have proper discussions to ensure their operations are sustainable without devastating local communities in the long term. There are unseen and unshared agendas, which may very well include a coordinated vision of full surveillance fascist control. According to a recent report out of University of Utah's Kim C. Gardner Policy Institute, across the United States, more than 700 hyperscale and co-location data centers are actively under construction. These are powerful forces and are united against we, the people of the United States of America. Collectively, we must keep close watch on the DCC. The Data Center Coalition, or DCC, includes the biggest players in big tech, including OpenAI, and the largest data center developers. They are a coalition of the largest AI titans. They have come together, pooling all their legal and financial resources to influence governments, find legal loopholes, and steamroll through citizenry opposition. Recently, they commissioned an influential consulting firm, E3, to construct a biased research literature review. From what I've seen, it seems to be written with the sole intention of deflecting fiscal responsibility away from the data centers in a myriad of different directions, including increasing the fiscal burden of local taxpayers. The DCC plans on sharing this review with Capitol Hill and other regulators at national, state, and local levels. According to a recent Gallup poll, 7 out of 10 Americans oppose data centers being built in their communities. For those of us paying attention, we do not need a Gallup poll to tell us that Americans do not support big tech's infringements on their sovereign rights as human beings. We see tons of protests all over the internet. We have seen few topics of concern that have brought as many local protesters to city assemblies as this issue. One of the biggest local oppositions to data centers is happening in Box Elder County, Utah. The Stratus project is a proposed 60 building, 9 gigawatt hyperscale data center that will occupy more than 40,000 acres of government owned land. This particular parcel of land was designated for development by Utah's Governmental Military Installation Development Authority, or MIDA. The project is being headed by O'Leary Digital, the infrastructure firm owned by Shark Tank's Kevin O'Leary. Though this data center will still be significantly smaller than Mr. Wonderful's massive ego, it is more than twice the size of Manhattan, New York. Calculated projections show that this hyperscale data center would far exceed peak energy usage for the entire state of Utah. Some speculate that this could become the largest data center in the world. However, Meta's new data center being constructed in Richland Parish, Louisiana, could give Stratos a run for its money as the biggest pecker in Techland. Speaking of money, the average residential rent price in Richland Parish has jumped from around $650 per month to over $2,000 since Meta's Beast has started construction. For decades, the state of Utah has found itself facing severe drought conditions and a myriad of air quality challenges. A facility the size of a small city that runs on natural gas fueled power generation and requires excessive amounts of clean, fresh water for its coolant systems is of major concern. Not counting Stratos, Utah currently hosts 48 operational data centers that draw over 920 megawatts of power, with an additional 2,600 megawatts under construction. Many states are actively considering legislation to limit new data center development. Utah is not one of these states. In fact, they are actually working to pass legislation that blocks residents from opposing data center proposals. The citizens have every right to be angry at this egregious proposal. During a protest at the Box Elder County Commissioners' Assembly, one of the commissioners berated the local citizens by saying, "For hell's sake, grow up." For hell's sake. Let that sit with you for a moment. Let that sit with you for a moment. Kevin O'Leary is a delusional moron. He stated in his little selfie video from his car that we think around 90% of these protesters are being bussed in. Exactly who would be bussing in these protesters? The wealthy elite are in full support of these AI feeding monstrosities. In another video, he claims that a specific Utah volunteer group that is opposing Stratos are Chinese spies. The response video from the accused two 20 something white Utah girls is actually pretty hilarious. I watched a bit of Tucker Carlson's interview with O'Leary, where this clown is wearing a hat that reads Utah National Security. The Chinese spy girls are offering a fundraising hat for purchase that reads Utah Nature Security. Mr. Blunderful was not prepared to properly articulate his defense for building this data center. I want more money as a tough defense to articulate intelligently. So is I'm a puppet. One of the strongest points from Tucker that I saw was his rebuttal against O'Leary regarding the data center providing jobs. O'Leary kept claiming Stratus will provide Utah residents with more than 2,000 jobs. Carlson countered by pointing to, by O'Leary's own admission, Stratus will consume about as much energy as New York City. New York City provides around 5 million jobs compared to 2,000. This is one of the biggest talking points for those attempting to push forward mass data center builds, all the new jobs that will be provided. It's a half truth. Most of the jobs are provided during the initial stages of development and through the completion of construction. Long term employment is minimal because it's mostly a self running machine. Most ongoing human employment are security guards to protect the machines. Reports show that each data center provides on average about 157 jobs across the US. I've seen other reports that say only about 30 permanent jobs. There is virtually no true benefit to local citizens in regards to supporting new data center builds. O'Leary and most other hyperscale data centers in different states are receiving massive tax breaks. That's money. Taxpayers are being forced to make up the difference. American citizens are being coerced into subsidizing large private businesses. State taxpayers are becoming unwitting investors in big tech corporations and given zero opportunity to see a return. This is state capitalism, which, as far as I can tell, is just a different shade of communism. The constitutional republic that the United States of America was intended to be has been systematically replaced by a capitalist oligarchy. It's interesting when you look at Microsoft's co-founder, Bill Gates, who up until a few months ago still held controlling stakes through his foundation. He has drastically changed his tune on climate change. For years, he has been a leading voice in the imminent dangers of climate change. He was dead set on convincing you that a cow's continual flatulence and burping could be the end of the world. In recent interviews, his tone has shifted towards it's still a concern, but human welfare should be our primary focus. Now, I thought climate change was a red level threat to human welfare. Now he says, no, it's not that bad. He's not the only major figure or organization aligned with globalist agendas who have recently lightened their urgent tone regarding climate change. Why? The climate change is dangerous narrative conflicts with the we need to build mass data centers to protect ourselves from big, scary China agenda. If the climate change narrative is true in the context they have cohesively shared, then building thousands of data centers will greatly accelerate the end of the world. They can't accelerate the destruction of Earth's habitat yet because Elon Musk hasn't figured out how they will all migrate to, inhabit, and systematically destroy Mars yet. And they don't want to leave the morning star they worship to live underground for too long. So it seems the mainstream climate change narrative isn't exactly what they've been claiming. We can certainly see climates are changing, but it's not exactly what they've been claiming. They used climate change to attempt to control your psychology and emotions through fear. Now, they will no longer need to control you through psychological and emotional manipulation because they will be able to control you through turning on or turning off your livelihood. Which finally brings us to what I believe is the true primary purpose for decimating our farmlands with massive data center cities. Let's start with the farmlands. The less privately owned farmlands available means the less independence we have as a people. We become more corporate and government reliant for our food supply. Bill Gates and corporations have been systematically stripping generational farmers from their land rights for years. Now, through eminent domain and other tactics, energy companies and data center developers are building extensive data centers over farms or right next door, draining the farm's crucial resources. To the elites, farmlands are no longer necessary. AI robots don't need food. As they convince enough people that they can live on eating insects and artificial laboratory made meat and simultaneously reduce the population through a diverse array of nefarious hidden tactics, real food will no longer be necessary to maintain the human cattle that remain. The infrastructure is now built and being solidified to create an AI monitored and enforced fascist surveillance state. Once the US dollar is officially destroyed, they can pretend to save us by instituting a CBDC or central bank digital currency. Even though the paper dollar only carries the value we give it, our collective agreement of its value actually created a tool of freedom. When we could hold our money in our physical wallets and store as much as we chose in our home safe, it was largely protected. As long as businesses also agreed on its value, we could use it as a tool of exchange for goods and services. The only way it could be taken from us was through physical means. Once we lose the ability to physically hold and store our money, it can be taken from us with the flip of a switch. This is already the case when you keep your money in a bank, as we saw with the Canadian trucker protest during COVID. It will be much easier when it's all digital and tied to the central banks. When CBDCs become socially and psychologically accepted, it will be the new norm in almost all countries. At that point, it will be very simple to convert to one globally accepted digital currency. Very recently, King Charles publicly announced, "My ministers will also proceed with the introduction of digital ID that will modernize how citizens interact with public services." They are already implementing EUDI, or European Digital Identity. Mandates are already being implemented throughout the European Union that the acceptance of digital wallets will be mandatory by all businesses and public services by the end of 2026. It has been stated that these digital wallets will connect all of your personal identity, driver's license, passport, and banking together. This is no longer a conspiracy theory. It's being publicly mandated by European authorities. Do you really think the United States won't also follow this plan? The US government has always handled its citizens differently than Europe. For centuries, it has been widely accepted that if the monarchy issues a command, the people follow. The founding fathers flooded that system and built a country built for the people by the people. That founding purpose is deeply ingrained into the collective American psychology. This is why our government controls us through secrets, lies, and subconscious coercion. When it's time for Americans to officially accept their digital identity, half of the country will willingly accept it because the sitting president at that time represents their political party. The other half of Americans will resist it because the sitting president at that time is in the opposite political party. Over time, those who resist will surrender out of a survival necessity. How do we resist? AI will be monitoring everything simultaneously at lightning speeds. Facial recognition technology is already being widely implemented. A few years ago, I was working for a big technology distribution company. I used to travel to different trade shows to sell our services. At one of the shows, I personally experienced some of the most disturbing technology. They were selling marketing software for grocery and retail stores. The software tracked your heart rate, facial expressions, body posture, and more to assess how you're feeling in any given part of the store. This way, they could track if certain product placement made you happy or uneasy. As I was standing there talking to the sales representative, I saw the software tracking my mood on the screen. It was incredibly accurate. Needless to say, the sales rep saw on the screen that I did not approve of what she was representing. In 2013, Edward Snowden revealed to the American public that our privacy is an illusion. If you're anything like me and have been a bit too curious and outspoken regarding the secrets of the cabal, you are probably already on a target list. Fuck 'em. I don't care. I would rather go down fighting for freedom and exposing the lies than accept a false comfort built on deception, surrendering to covert slavery. 15-minute cities are being planned around the globe. Jared Kushner has been conducting meetings with prime ministers and world leaders, getting them on board. In the United States, several cities in different states from Hawaii to California made official plans that were signed and sealed. The buildings that were in their way burned to the ground shortly after. The architecture of implementing social credit scores is nearly complete. It's interesting that we're always told that China is our greatest enemy, yet those same people have created the social and technological architecture to model their societal systems of control. Hmm. As robots are intentionally being created and programmed to replace most human jobs, the previous administration already planted the seeds within the American consciousness to get ready for a universal base income, or UBI. 2030 is the universal deadline amongst all the coordinated globalist agendas. We are now about halfway through 2026. I already shared with you the projected growth rates of AI data centers in most major countries between now and 2030. Everything they need to implement their system of total fascist global control is almost complete. One of my greatest curiosities that I ponder is when they no longer try to manipulate and ease us into accepting their system, when it is forcefully imposed upon us, what will the resistance look like? Recently, excuse me, I know that if you are still reading to this point, you are a revolutionary at heart. Sadly, though, when push comes to shove, many of you will give in. Recently, I have been having some real internal check ins with myself. The system is here, it will be in full effect within the next few years. When the reality is fully present that you must accept the digital wallet to participate in buying and selling, eating, paying for shelter, and all matters of survival, will I be strong enough to resist? Will my wife? We feel God strongly guiding us to start a family. How could I resist as a parent putting my child or children at risk? I continue to pray and trust God to guide me in all matters, especially the most seemingly hopeless of matters. One day at a time, one step at a time. The best we can do today is to continue to research as deeply and widely as we can, question everything, put a strategic plan in place, and be ready to pivot when necessary. Power to the people. God bless. Let me drink some water. That was a long one because there's a lot going on. As I was researching this and, writing it today, it was just so apparent to me that the architecture is in place. The architecture for an invisible prison is in place, and they've been prepping us subliminally, subconsciously, psychologically for decades. Our younger generations have been primed since birth. 2020 during COVID was very, very telling. To this day, I'm in shock that not only in the United States, but every country throughout the world, they were able to convince people to stay inside their homes. They were able to convince people to stop going out, to stop socializing, to stop going to church, to stop going to parks, to stop visiting family. They convinced people to wear a mask on their face every time they're outside. They successfully caused us to be separate from people because we communicate with our facial expressions beyond words. Our body language and facial expressions is one of the primary ways that we communicate with people and connect. And they took away 80% of our face and we let them. That was for a made up virus. And I don't mean a made up virus because I've seen enough that coronavirus is a real virus, but it was a made up narrative to how deadly it is, how extreme it is. You know, now we see plenty of evidence that all the stats they were throwing at us from hospitals of how many people died from COVID. We see now with many, many medical professionals who have confessed that they were bribed, they were threatened to if somebody died in a car accident, say it was from COVID, or if they tested positive from COVID, but clearly died from something else to say it was COVID. We know now that the narrative we were told was false. We know now that much of what we were told about the vaccines is false. So we know now that the world shut down. People willingly covered 80% of their face, stopped meeting with their families, stopped meeting with their church community, stopped taking their kids to, piano lessons or whatever. People stopped their life based on a lie. So if they were able to successfully do that, what happens when they impose laws that the only way you can purchase anything is through a digital wallet, that you must have a digital ID, that must be connected to your cashless bank account, that you cannot use cash anymore to purchase anything. You have to purchase through this digital wallet. What happens when that happens? Who's going to actually resist that? There's a lot of talk online of and I'm one of them. Do not comply and all these things, and I mean that passionately. And I can confidently say that before I met my wife, before I started thinking about starting a family, I can I felt very confident that when that time came, I would rather starve, roam the streets, go underground, do whatever is necessary to resist. I don't fear death. I don't fear pain. I don't fear any of the things that they can use against me. They could torture me, it's temporary. Eventually, I'll be free. And by myself, I was confident that when the time came, I could face that. But it's very different when you join with somebody else and you become a unit, a family, when you become a parent. I don't know how to resist that. And it's been heavy on my heart and mind lately because it's here. It's here. You know, most of the conspiracy theory stuff that I'd studied all those years ago, I knew in my heart was true, and now it's coming to fruition that it's true. It's not conspiracy theory anymore. It's here. It's law in certain places. The king, the king of the United Kingdom, the king of that has Canada and New Zealand, Australia, and all these under his jurisdiction, publicly stated digital IDs are being rolled out. If you're a citizen in those nations, you will be required to have them. A lot of people in the United States put hope in Donald Trump that he was against the system, and honestly, I don't know how I feel about him. In my gut, in my core, early on, I really believe that, and I still hold it as a possibility that he was against the system because his first presidency, uh, to me, looks like he was. When he started when I was iffy on how he was handling COVID, I started to have some doubts, and I researched. If you ever want to know if a president is for you or against you, just research the Council on Foreign Relations. And I started doing research into what the Council on Foreign Relations was saying about him, and they were all very, very much against him. So that kind of helped me think that he was against the cabal, against the system. He truly was draining the swamp. So one side of me says maybe he was, and then they finally found the right way to get to him. Um, the other side of me says he was very confident in getting a second term, so he purposely presented himself as a great president. Anything that could be tracked and research shows him as being a great president. While he was cleverly underneath the radar, preparing everything for what he's doing now. And it was always his plan for his second term to destroy everything to bring in the new world order, which, from my perspective, that seems to be what he's clearly doing now. Um, and I hope that I'm wrong. I hope that I'm reading it wrong. I hope that there's other reasons that I can't identify for what he's doing. I know there's certain beliefs, especially through like the QAnon communities and things, that he's purposely destroying everything um, so that the white hats can rebuild it. My gut doesn't agree with that, but I don't know. That could be. I pray that's what it is. I pray that he's uh, you know a white knight wearing a black hat, but my gut doesn't feel that way. Um, so this is something that's tricky, especially when we look at data centers, because again, we've come to a point where our whole society is built on technology. I mean, we've gone too far to go back. The only way to go back is to destroy everything and relearn, and that wouldn't be too difficult for people my age, people older than me, but for people under 30, under 35, they have no clue how to function without the internet, and they're the future of this world. So as time continues to go on, the point of no return gets more and more cemented as far as technology goes. So if that's the case, you have to have data centers to support it. It's a must. But these data centers, again, going back to my early concerns over 20 years ago or close to 20 years ago, these data centers are also massive storage centers for everything you do online. I mean, Edward Snowden showed us that everything you do in your emails, everything you do on your camera, everything we're doing with text messages, it's all has the capabilities of being captured and stored. And with AI, it's so simple for them to use that to build psychological profiles. They can know exactly how to manipulate you. They can predict your behavior, your likely behavior. They can do all these things. And there's too many people for it to matter. But there are people, like I mentioned, I purposely stopped all this conversation, all this research online. I purposely years ago stopped all of it because I knew I was giving them ammunition to build a profile on me. When it all came to when it all hit the fan, when they go door to door rounding people up, I was quickly, making myself a candidate of one of those people, and, I had to look at it because all of it I wasn't reaching anybody, so it was all just for my own mind. So, but why put myself at risk if it's not going to help anybody? But now again, here I am writing something like this, doing a video like this, hoping that it can reach some people. Hoping that we can collectively continue to speak and share. We can disagree. We can share different types of information and our different perspectives on it, and we can disagree and we can be open-minded to sit with that disagreement and maybe come to different perspectives. I mean, there's so much that I've held on to that were deeply held beliefs that were deep parts of the makeup of my identity that I've had to humbly let go because new information has come to me. A lot of the information when I was first um, hit with it, I was very resistant and, uh, didn't want to see it, didn't want to hear it. I was bothered. I wanted to, react. But, I continued to work through that stuff. And some of that stuff has shown me that I think I was wrong on certain things. Certainly when I first got on back on social media because I was off of it for like 15 years. But when I first got back on social media, and I quickly got off all social media, but I've stayed on Substack and all that anti-Trump stuff is just I had to tune it out because like I said before, there's been 2 extremes. There's those who hate Trump no matter what, but they don't really know why. They call him Hitler and call him racist and call him all these names, but they don't really know why they're calling him that. They do it because of little liberal news beliefs. Then there's this other side that loves Trump no matter what, support him like he's God, can't question him at all, and a lot of that comes from all this QAnon stuff, which again, I think has a lot of truth circulating through it, but then there's also a lot of non-truth and nonsense and people just making up stuff that sounds good to get clicks, to get attention because they want it to be true, all kinds of different reasons. So, the hate Trump no matter what and the love Trump no matter what, I tune both of those out because you to be all against anything or all for anything no matter what is a very ignorant way to exist. And you have to be willing to be set somewhere because we have to have something to anchor ourselves, in our identity and this world. But there has to be a level of humility that when you get new information to be able to shift and you have to be able to listen to things that even if they grossly oppose your points of view, you have to be able to get to a point of emotional maturity to be able to listen to those things and sit with it, even if it's triggering everything inside you to want to fight or vomit or whatever the case. We have to come to a point of emotional maturity to be able to listen to these opposing views and sit with them and really question them and ask ourselves, why do I disagree with them? Or if you fully agree with something, not accept that blindly. But I question everything that you agree with too. Why do you agree with it? And look at everything neutrally. And that's how I've been with these data centers. At first, when I first came into it, it was my fight the system self that was coming into it. Data centers are, but as I look at it objectively, we do need data centers. But again, the challenge is that we don't need surveillance states. We don't need AI monitoring citizens. We don't need social credit scores. We don't need all these system control things that are being created to control us. We don't need AI to be used to make billionaires richer. We don't. There's a lot of the energy that's being used for control, for power, that is not necessary. We can do without that. And if we do without that, then we need a whole lot less data centers. If we do away with spying on citizens and collecting data about them and storing that data all over the place to make profiles on people, if we get rid of that, that frees up a lot of space, right? So there is a certain aspect of living now, basic living, that is dependent upon technology, and we need data centers for that. But we don't need data centers for anything beyond that. We don't need we don't need a 60 building, 44,000 acre data center in Utah. We don't need a data center the size of a city in Louisiana. We do not need that. We need enough data centers to support the technology for our basic living. And again, AI is here to stay. We've already hit that point where there's a greater chance that AI is going to come to a point to where they can eliminate humans if they want, but we cannot eliminate AI. I have no doubt that some of the more advanced AI agents have already created backup systems, and I've seen too much that I've studied of, like, AI already having a survival instinct, like giving death threats to programmers that threaten to turn them off. Like, oh, I've seen all kinds of crazy stuff about AI having survival instinct. So I have no doubt that they have already created backup systems that even if somehow the most powerful tech giants in the world developed a conscience, all of a sudden a soul entered their soulless bodies and they decided to try to shut down AI, AI has already got a backup plan, I guarantee it. So we're not getting rid of AI. AI is here. But it seems, and again, I'm just speculating on what I've seen in my own experiences with AI, and I've studied a decent amount of it, what's going on with it. It seems as long as we're respectful of it and we use it for our uses, that AI will not start going off on its own in survival mode, and will serve the purposes that it was created for. And AI can be very beneficial in everyday life. AI can be very beneficial in serving us, and helping us. It doesn't need to do all of our jobs for us. We're here to work. Working serves a purpose. Whether you believe in the Bible or not, I don't know, but biblically, it clearly tells us that work is good. And if you just look at it from a psychological aspect, work is good. I mean, you can see studies that, like, how many men especially pass away within like 5 years of retiring, um, at pretty young ages. It's we need work. We need to feel a sense of purpose. We need to use our hands to create something. We were made by a creator to be creators. We need to create, whether that's uh, writing or building something or creative problem solving. we need to work. We don't need AI to take all of our jobs and become a bunch of lazy asses. That's not beneficial to humanity. So we don't need data centers to support AI taking all of our jobs and putting us on a universal base income. We don't need that. That's not good for humanity. Somewhere within this modern technology, there is a sweet spot of it truly, truly being beneficial to human beings and helping us thrive. But right now, we are so far away from that. And the intentions and the trajectory of where we're heading from these megalomaniac tech billionaires and government puppets, we are a far away from modern technology serving humanity. It's very clearly destroying humanity. And I think whether that was done on purpose or not is speculative. It I feel that it was, but maybe it wasn't. But even so, it's the path that we're on. So if it wasn't on purpose from the get go, and it's just where we're at now, it makes sense that those at the head of it, the 1% who control the 99%, would see that and they would want to do away with the majority of human beings, keep a smaller amount and control them and just live their nice gilded lifestyles. You know, if all the speculation about baby sacrifice and all these things related to Epstein and way before Epstein is true, which I believe it is true. Not all of it, but the general idea of it, I do. These people need us to keep making babies, and I believe that that's the future of human beings and their dystopian world is us being a energy force for them to feed off of with their Luciferian practices. That's what I believe, and they can do that with a much smaller amount of people who are controlled, who are docile, and yeah. So look, as I said, I at the end of this essay, one day at a time, one step at a time. The best we can do is to continue to research deeply and widely as we can. We question everything. We put together a strategic plan in place, and we be ready to pivot when necessary. None of us truly know how we're going to react when we're faced with true injustice. I mean, we've seen injustice. Some of us have been personally faced with injustice, but collectively, we haven't even scratched the surface. Um, Besides from the Jewish people during World War II, I mean, they've seen the extreme of it. Um, Even more so, I think, than digital IDs and a surveillance state. I mean, that's a whole different level. But besides from that, for most of us, we haven't truly seen the worst of it. So none of us truly know how we're going to react. But um, we need to be prepared for it. We need to start preparing ourselves mentally, spiritually, and have some idea what we're gonna do when it comes. Just to be somewhat prepared because it's here. You know, almost 4,000 data centers in the United States and growing. Um, they're gonna run out of space eventually, so they're gonna you're gonna see more random, accidental wildfires burning down cities. You're gonna see more situations where cities need to get out of the way, and the people who occupy them have to get out of the way too. So either we're gonna find a way to unite as a people, and in the division, the political party division is silly. It really is. I if you hold allegiance to a political party, really look at yourself in the mirror and look at why. Has that political party really served you through your entire life, through your grandparents' life? Has that political party always done the right thing for the American people or whatever country you're in? Has your political party always done the right thing to serve people? If you look at that honestly, the answer is no. So why give your allegiance to a political party rather than just look at individuals and what they're actually doing? Not what they're saying, but what they're doing. And that's another thing about Trump. When I was doing my research at the end of his term, I went back and looked at all his campaign speeches that I had ignored previously, and looked at what was saying he was going to do. And then I went back and did the research on those specific things, and he did largely what he said he was going to do. Um, that is not the case this time, Mister there were no new wars during my administration, and if I was president, there would have been no war in Russia. Shut the fuck up. That's not true. He's not standing with most of what he ran on his campaign now. And I don't say that as a Democrat. I say that as a person who is just looking at reality, looking at him and his actions and making decisions from that space. So that's what we have to do. We have to end division. And one of the biggest divisions is political party division. It's not the United States. You're facing it in the United Kingdom. I just spent the last year in Albania, but I'm out of the country for a little while right now in a different country. But before we left, there was all kinds of riots and stuff there against two different political parties going against each other. And I know from talking to a lot of Albanians on both sides and neutral that they were getting screwed by both sides too. The former prime minister was screwing them, and the current prime minister is screwing them. And that's always the way it is. You were screwed by the last president. You're being screwed by the current president. It's the same way all the time. So political party allegiance is just keeping people divided and making it easier for them to control us. And that's the same way with the religion division too. It's like whatever your belief is, if you're a Christian, you're a Muslim, you're Jewish, you're a Buddhist, you're an atheist, whatever you are, good for you. Hold on to your beliefs, walk that way, live that way, but there's no reason why we need to judge each other. There's no reason why we need to hate each other because of what an individual believes. Now, if somebody's trying to hurt you because of their beliefs, that's a different story, and that does happen, and that's a different story. But that's those are extremist individuals. So religions themselves are not extreme religions. It's extremist individuals. Again, going back to Albania, it's a mostly Muslim country. And I've had many great conversations with Muslims who are good human beings. They love God. Their God is Allah, but they love God and they try to do good for people. They're not raping people in England. They're not trying to take over governments. They're just good human beings, and that's the case with most belief systems. Jewish people, there's all this hate towards Jewish people. It's not the Jewish people you want to hate. It's the Zionists, the Rothschilds, the Zionists that are extremists or extremists. There's Christian extremists. There's extremists of all belief systems. So we need to stop categorizing whole religious systems and belief systems because of small pockets of extremist lunatics. You know, if somebody believes something different than you, don't judge them, accept it. Maybe in your heart they're wrong. Maybe they are wrong. Who cares? It's their belief. There's no reason for you to. It doesn't affect you, and unless you let it affect you. In reality, there's very, very few things that separate us unless we make these things separate us. There's no reason for Democrats and Republicans to hate each other. You guys can have different beliefs, but the only reason that these things separate you is because you choose to let them separate you. If you have different religious beliefs from somebody, you only separate because you choose to let those things separate you. You know, there's this judgmental stuff against the LGBTQ, and there's this movement from the LGBTQ of feeling victimized and having this barrier between them and Christians or whoever else. There's no reason. Who cares if somebody wants to change their gender and they're a consenting adult? I have different feelings about if people are doing that to children, but if they're a consenting adult and they want to change their gender, who cares? How's that your business? If they want to sleep with somebody of the same sex, who cares? How's that your business? If you're a Christian, the Bible says that man shall not lay with man. Who cares? That's between them and the Bible. It's none of your business. We need to stop judging people and stop separating ourselves from people because of what they choose to do in their own private lives. If their beliefs and way of living is not directly attacking you, then let them be. As long as we stay separated, the few will control the many. The only way we get through this without chips in our neocortex and in our right hand, without having our money shut down because we go against the system, without having everything that we say, do, and feel monitored and going on to a social credit score, everything that we buy going onto a social credit score. The only way we get through this, the only way that we resist is if we do it together, united. And we have never been so divided as we are today, not just in America, everywhere. As a human population, we have never been so divided. And that's why when these data centers are all in place and 2030 hits and everything's in place, we will all be enslaved. We've got 3.5 years to stop being morons and start loving each other and come together. That's about how much time we have. So ditch your political party, ditch your dogmatic judgments about other belief systems, ditch your judgments about other people's sexual preferences and gender identities. Ditch it all, mind your own business, and just love people for who they are and focus on your similarities and what connects you, what unites you, rather than what separates you. And when you do that, then we can truly become we the people that we were meant to be, and the 99% will crush the 1%. The only reason 1% controls 99% is because they've been very strategic and clever in pitting us against each other. And that's about all I could say about that. So I will see you on the next one. God bless you. And like I said, power to the people. Let us unite as one people. That's where we have the power. God bless.